Good day, I'm Oskar Sherlief and you're watching news from Kazakhstan, and here are the top stories. Members of the EU Parliament were shocked to establish serious human rights and freedoms violation facts in Kazakhstan after holding a number of meetings with opposition forces, public organizations and mass media representatives. Back to work, Kazakh parliamentarians' first session after summer break was addressed by President Nazarbayev. Mayor of Almaty had criticized the Education Ministry, while Governor of the Eastern Kazakhstan region was unsatisfied with the unpreparedness of schools after the new academic year took start yesterday. The Almaty City Court had finished reviewing the appeal of the Respublika and Vzglyad newspapers' journalists. The previous court decision remained unchanged. Back then, Administrative Court had fined the protesters for the action held in the City Court building on August 10th.
I have a feeling that we are being politically persecuted and that the authorities want to shut us down by not only depriving our license, but to shut down the freedom of speech in general. According to the court resolution, all 5 journalists were obliged to pay the fine from $100 to $350 for holding unsanctioned rally next to the city court building. By such symbolic way, wearing rubber gloves and holding buckets and posters, journalists attempted to clear off the dirtied reputation of the judiciary system. Protesters called their action as an artistic performance and had put down the posters required by the police, which immediately arrived at the site. This action was admitted as a rally by the first instance court, which had issued an administrative punishment. The judge Yerbulat Jangazin made the previous instance court decision unchanged after the appeal trial held yesterday. Journalists were outraged because in similar action related with Kazakhstan engineering, interest holders who also did put posters away right after the first warning. It is actually a colossal mistake of the country chairing the OSCE to cut the civil activities short, especially the media protests.
Supposedly, this case will be entered the records of the human rights violation in Kazakhstan, which will then make part of the alternative report to be submitted to the OSCE and the European Union by the members of the European Parliament who are currently visiting Kazakhstan. They have visited several towns and met members of oppositional parties, public organizations and independent media representatives and others who are often persecuted by the authorities of Kazakhstan.
The editorial staff of the Kazakh newspaper Golos Respubliki is awaiting the European parliamentarian Joe Higgins. The journalists have a lot to say as the circulation of the newspaper is being hampered, the petitions to the government are being ignored by the court, the numerous fines for the conduction of the protest actions and even the arrest of the journalist Жанна Байтилова for 10 days. Everyone on the international arena knows our situation, that only we, the Kazakh people, will be able to change the situation in the country. Yes, we need the moral support, but in fact, no one will be able to help us. The European parliamentarians have visited Astana and Karaganda besides Almaty. The things that they saw contradicts the official reports of Kazakhstan concerning the superiority of the law in the country. The Western diplomats state the reality, including the mass violations of convicts' rights and the workers.
The crucial thing is that European capitalism wants the resources and raw materials that Kazakhstan has, and they are prepared to close their eyes.
Joe Higgins is distressed by the fact that the chairmanship in the OSCE was in exchange for oil. The foreign politician promises that when he will arrive back home, he will tell the truth. Many deputies of the European Parliament will oppose the hypocrisy and double standards. The leaders of the public organizations in Kazakhstan are ready to support the European initiative. They are ready to monitor the situation in Kazakhstan to provide more realistic picture which is happening in the country, as opposed to the official political circles that provide loyalty or totally discharge the democratic principles. The member of the European Parliament, Higgins, notes that the actions of the authorities concerning the human rights defender Vadim Kuramshin, who was arrested on August 28 in Kokshetau, show the real face of the authorities. The representatives of the European Parliament are intended to visit another several cities where the residents actively defend their rights using different actions and appealing to the court.
Kazakh parliamentarians returned from summer holidays just yesterday. President Nursultan Nazarbayev had traditionally addressed the deputies during their first work session after the summer break. During his speech, the country's leader had outlined a scope of tasks. According to some of them, Kazakhstan must become an extremely attractive country in the front of the global community as the OSCE summit is approaching. Amongst others, there were mentioned projects on industrial development, protection of businesses, promotion of education sector, and even humanization of law enforcement bodies. Disciplinary measures were applied to the head of the Granitny colony just on the spot. In the meantime, defender of convicts' rights Vadim Kuramshin was arrested for 10 days and is held in the pre-trial detention center. Next story has more.
The Committee on the Protection of Convicts' Rights is thinking how to defend the head of the committee. Vadim Kuramshin will be detained in Kokshetau for at least 10 days. He is convicted for the hooliganism and was placed into the cell. His colleagues claim that their chief was put in jail unjustly and are creating headquarters. The Kokshetau colony is located near the Granitny village on which the human rights defenders were working on. The disciplinary penalty is not the necessary level of punishment that we are demanding. We think that these people must be convicted and imprisoned in the same institution where they were beating and torturing the convicts. Meanwhile, the deputies were desperately waiting for the first session. There are many problems in the country and the desire to solve them all is high. The last thing that they worked on before the vacation was the law on the leader of nation, while today the leader himself has depicted the problems before the parliamentarians. As you know, 2 weeks ago I signed a decree on the increase of efficiency of the law enforcement bodies. This initiative was positively met by the public. The main goal of the innovation is the humanization, decriminalization of criminal policies. The changes are directed at decreasing the number of convicts in Kazakhstan, which is high. At the same time, there is very little order in the penitentiary system. Another rumors concerning the cutting of stomachs emerged just recently. The former Justice Minister and the MP Zagipa Baliyeva says that in such cases the truth is always ambiguous. I think that the truth is in the middle, which means that both sides have to respect the law. The law has to be followed strictly. The people who are convicted, they know well that their rights are limited. The 1st of September in the parliament is the opening day, but already now the colleagues of Vadim Kuramshin are planning to send a parliamentarian inquiry to the Majlis with a request to control the case of Kuramshin and not let the provocation. At the moment, they don't know the situation with Kuramshin and are planning to visit Kokshetau and personally monitor the condition of the human rights defender.
From now on, a political prisoner Yevgeny Zhovtis can be paid a visit in the colony, although it is prohibited for him to meet with the media. The Alga unregistered political party members visited Yevgeny in the Ust-Kamenogorsk colony. They congratulated the human rights activist with getting an award from the Norwegian Helsinki Committee. The news on the award was personally delivered to Zhovtis by the representatives of the mentioned organization just recently.
The Alga political party activist spoke with Zhovtis for more than an hour. Authorities still prohibit the mass media to film the human rights defender. The party members say that Zhovtis feels well, quite energetic, and still continues rendering illegal aid, even staying behind the cell. However, the activists were not satisfied with the strictness of the regime under which the prisoner is detained. Unlike other inmates of the colony, Zhovtis cannot leave the prison territory sometimes. Moreover, every visit to him is observed by 2 colony officers who take notes of every word during conversation between the convicted lawyer and his visitors. The Alga representatives told reporters that the purpose of their visit was to give a support to Yevgeny Zhovtis and promised to facilitate his soonest release. He is a man of iron will, a man who cannot be broken easily. Whilst we are all out, we must do everything possible to help him get released as soon as possible, because we don't have many people like him in our country.
During the Knowledge Day traditionally celebrated in Kazakhstan on September 1st, the mayor of Almaty city had criticized the education sector. According to the official, the pupils' knowledge assessment methods do not comply with the reality. Mayor made such unflattering statements during solemn opening ceremony at one of the city schools.
Almaty city is the 3rd top position according to the results of the annual national testing this year. Comparing to last year, this is a progress, as in 2009 the secondary school graduates of the southern capital were at the 16th position. According to Yesimov, it is not correct to assess the general education level of the entire region based upon the results of the test. He doesn't agree with the opinion that pupils of Almaty are less educated than their peers in other regions of Kazakhstan. He also emphasized that the education level in the city is quite high, since the Almaty metropolitan is indeed considered as a cultural center of the country. I actually requested Education Ministry leadership to approach this issue more objectively, and the common testing results don't serve as indicator of the education level of Almaty pupils, lower than the ones in other regions of the country, which went way ahead of us last year. The common national national test was launched in Kazakhstan 8 years ago. Ever since, the Education Ministry officials have been regularly reporting about the successes as well as the shortcomings of the initiative. For example, in 2008, about 1,000 of pupils' points were calculated wrong because of the software failures. This, say some experts, created a stressful situation which led to many suicide cases among secondary school graduates across the country. Education Minister Tuminbayev had even promised to consider returning to the old Soviet system of enrolling in the high school education institutions, but eventually had changed his mind. Now he only promises to enhance the current system. Some experts keep expressing discontent regarding the mistakes in the quiz questions, regularly changing past threshold points and many other shortcomings. The current year test ended with numerous scandals. Well, we didn't expect that some people would not get sufficient points to earn the golden mark with difference of 1 or 2 points. They can apply to appeal commission, which will fairly review each case.
In the meantime, more than 7,000 Kazakh schools have opened their doors as the new academic year took start yesterday.
The new academic year had prepared a number of surprises for both pupils and teachers. As an experiment, Kazakh schools introduced a special uniform for school children as well as the faculty members. A new subject, self-knowledge, was introduced, and Kazakh pupils will learn foreign languages from the new textbooks. During the official opening ceremony of the academic year, the Kazakh Education Vice Minister had confirmed that a number of foreign publishing houses got contracts with Kazakh government on publishing the textbooks. Makhmetgali Sarabekov had told reporters that they have held experiments in some schools with the new textbooks. Just several years ago, the Education Ministry was totally against of involving foreign companies in publishing textbooks for Kazakh schools. Starting this academic year, the Education Ministry will switch to another level of publishing the foreign languages as well as Kazakh and Russian language textbooks. Editorial groups are formed and a number of publishing houses got the right to publish textbooks for Kazakh schools.
The new academic year is yet to start with a scandal. The new subject introduced at all secondary schools, called self-knowledge, had become a subject for hot discussions amongst public activists and officials. Next story has the details.
The new academic year started with introduction of the new subject in all secondary schools of Kazakhstan, which is called self-knowledge class. More than $100 million were allocated by the Education Ministry to publish the textbooks on the new subject. The First Lady of Kazakhstan, Sara Nazarbayeva, is the author of the course. This subject is much needed in the schools, and we believe it will greatly help our children become more self-confident and successful in life. Political Solutions Institute Applied Expertise Department leader Irina Chernych has nothing against the subject, but she wonders what is the purpose it follows. Will the course bring up a critical thinking individual who will be able to analyze the situation and make decisions, or does it imply the brainwashing in the classroom? The textbook annotation reads, "The self-knowledge studies the key human values." According to Muslims Union of Kazakhstan, Murat Talibekov considers President's spouse moral endeavors as a good thing, but he doesn't think it should be done forcefully, though. Well, we will have another First Lady tomorrow, so what? Shall we adjust the school curriculum upon the personal interest of each next First Lady? I don't think it is appropriate. The self-knowledge textbook reminds a salad which has a little bit of everything, including extracts from the book of Dmitry Vershagin, founder of the so-called Further Energy Information Development School. Chairman of the Russia's Experts Council on Religious Expertise, Alexander Dvorkin, refers the mentioned school to the so-called totalitarian sect. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Center Dialogue claims the sect applies extremely dangerous psychological techniques which may lead to the mental disturbance.